exploitation, and we'll start talking about this in a moment, is quite often we forget that this is where it's the first time safeguarding is happening outside the home necessarily, and actually it's a whole different set of processes and a whole different set of systems. So we'll break that down in a bit and look at how children's services work within this arena as well. I know we've got some partners on the call, we've got parents and carers, so if anybody has any questions, I have no issues of anybody using the chat or anything else, that's fine. Claire, I think, is going to keep an eye on that. And there will be time at the end for any questions and answers. Yeah, just pop your hand up if there is anything. So in terms of when we're talking about child exploitation, the two key types of exploitation that we're looking at is criminal and sexual, the two that you'll hear a lot of. There are also modern slavery, which criminal and sexual falls into, but what we're going to concentrate on today are the two main types of exploitation of children. So when we talk about criminal exploitation, what we're looking at is where a child is being coerced, groomed, manipulated, made to, in fact, you can insert whatever word you would like in that sentence, carry out criminal activity on behalf of somebody else. So these are the adults that are trying to get away with criminal activity, and rather than put themselves at the front at the risk of getting caught, they feel that it's better to risk a child's future. So this is one of the things, and what we need to really remember about criminal exploitation, guys, is that it literally can change the trajectory of a child's life, and it is really, really that serious. Some of the crimes that are being committed around criminal exploitation are really serious, and a lot of children don't realise what they're doing, and they don't realise necessarily that they've got a choice into this because of the virtue of exploitation, which we'll look at. You've got the definition there of what child exploitation is. I'm not going to read that out to you. I believe these slides will be sent to everybody as well, so you'll have a copy of this. But this is the Home Office definition from 2018, and quite basically it is anybody who is coercing, controlling, manipulating anybody into some form of criminality. Even if the activity appears consensual is the absolute key to this bit as well, because actually sometimes children say, yeah, I said I was going to do that. I don't mind going and doing that. That's fine. But they're children and they don't realise what's being asked of them, and we have to remember that. Sexual exploitation is where we are essentially looking at a child that is being coerced into, groomed, manipulated, forced, talked into, lied about having some sort of sexual interaction. Now, that can be a physical sexual interaction where people have met. That can also be an online interaction. It could also be where somebody's asked a young person to send them sexual images, so indecent images of children. And once those are out there, we all know that they are out there, and we find it very, very hard to ever get those back again. There are some services out there that will support, especially with children, and we use that in our systems, which I'll tell you about in a while. But essentially, we all know that once something's in the World Wide Web, it is out there. So again, this gives the definition. Won't go through it, but again, this is from the Department of Education. This is the 2017 one. A lot of people ask me, why is it that local authorities or police services in different areas do things differently? And we've sometimes had families that have moved from one place to another, and they'll say, well, we didn't have this. We didn't do it this way in our area. We actually had a team that were working around kids with exploitation, or they might have gone through a different process or a different panel in order to access resources. But the reality is that our guidance that we're given by the government is very, very basic. Now, this can be interpreted in so many ways, I think. For me, this is open to an awful lot of interpretation. We have to develop local prevention strategies. Doesn't say to what level, doesn't say what the outcome needs to be. Identify children and young people at risk of exploitation. So again, this is partnership wide. We need to all understand who we think is being exploited. Then we need to know how to safeguard that child and promote their welfare when they are vulnerable to exploitation, or if they're experiencing exploitation. All of our children are vulnerable to exploitation by virtue of their age. Okay, the ages and stages of their development, where they are in their life, the fact that their brain hasn't fully formed, they are going to be at risk of exploitation or vulnerable to exploitation. And then we're looking at taking actions against the facilitator and perpetrators of the child exploitation. And that's a really, really difficult bit. Now, how each local authority or local force area, if we're talking about the police, interpret this and what systems and processes they put in place will develop. So it will depend very much on what setup they've got and what they've got behind them. We're really lucky in Lincolnshire that we've got a really, really robust system. It's fully multi-agency and it is fully supported. And I'll go through some of those processes in a bit, and it will hopefully explain to you what we can do to try and take out the perpetrators of the child exploitation. So a lot of the time, the children have got support around them. They've got parents that love them. They've got people that are caring for them in a professional capacity. They've got schools that are looking out for them. Actually, if the child's already got that, the only way we're going to stop this from happening is by stopping the perpetrator's behaviour and actions. So this is what we're looking at doing. So that's our very basic guidance that we get. So what we've done is we take that and we add it with some other guidance that we've got to try and make the best system that we can. And the reason I've put this up is because there is the slide there that says what is contextual safeguarding. I think many people still assume that safeguarding is what is happening to the child within their home by their parent caregiver. That's what everybody always thinks within, if you talk about social care, social services, you know, people will think, oh, that kid might be something is happening in the home. However, society has changed. It's developing rapidly. We've got this wonderful technology that's come in, like social media and mobile phones that nobody can get away from, that's really sort of put a spin on young people's development and how they see the world. And actually now what we're seeing is the risk to teenagers more and more, we're identifying that risk as being outside of the home environment. So before, our safeguarding mechanisms are set up on those two inner circles. Who's the child? Who are the primary caregivers? What are our worries? Obviously, they're going to take a holistic view and they'll look at education and everything else, but it used to be more one that focus in the home. What we need to look at now is those old style safeguarding systems. They don't work. Not when we've got people in the community that are luring our children into drug use, drug addiction. They are luring people into carrying out criminal or sexual acts. They are befriending people to get them to that point where they can then take advantage of them. And what they're looking at doing is essentially taking over the lives of these people and changing the path that they are going in. We don't want that for our children. We don't want our children to go down to the criminal justice system route. You know, children need to be children, and we need to protect them as much as we possibly can. Now, I don't know whether this will play sound. I'm going to give it a go, Claire. I think it will, but if it doesn't, then this will come out in the link. So I'm going to press play now. Okay, some of those links will come out, so I didn't want to stay there while they went all the way through the email address for that one. So just to go through as well, some of you will and some of you won't be aware of how Children's Services is made up, and this is a really brief summary. But I guess what I'm trying to say to everybody is Lincolnshire is absolutely massive as a county. I believe it's the second largest in the country. Not only that, is that we've got really difficult demographics in terms of they're difficult because they're so different. Yeah, you can drive 5 miles up the road and feel that you're in a completely different place within Lincolnshire. And the demographics is what drives contextual safeguarding. That's what drives who our people are in that community. What access they've got to services will drive that. So essentially, I just wanted to show that we do have teams in every area, and this is how concerns come through. Because for some of you as parents and carers, I guess it's reassuring for you to know that if somebody from school phones through, this is the process it goes through. You know, if you had a concern and you phoned up, this is what would happen. So that top bar at the top is that we have our call takers. They're taking all the information. They're extremely well versed at asking really open questions and gathering as much information as possible. They take that information, it's collated, and then it is sent through to our social work screening team, which is the next bar. What they look at doing is they basically are looking at that level of risk, that threshold. Do we think there's a risk of significant harm? Is there anything that we can do? And if it meets one of those outcomes, it might be that it doesn't meet any outcome. It hasn't met a threshold, so it isn't going to go anywhere. If those screeners see elements in there of child exploitation, they will come to me. They will send it to us just for us to have that second look, just to make sure we haven't missed anything. So what I'm trying to say is we've got some fail safes in there as well to try and catch things through the systems. We've obviously got cases that might be allocated, no further action, and it might be that they're already open, so they go to the worker. Then you've got in the orange boxes, those are all social care teams. So there are 8 different social care teams across the county. There are actually more, but these are our family assessment and support teams. And then what we've got across the underneath, you've then got early help teams that cover 2 of the social care teams. And then down in the middle, in our lovely purple star, we've got the Future for Me team. This is the team that I sit in, hence why I've put them in a star. But essentially, they are the super team that have got those specialist bits of knowledge that ideally what we're hoping is happening is we're supporting all those other teams that you can see around there to make sure that they are completely comfortable and happy about working with exploitation. We hold the main bit of information, we coordinate that work as the specialists, and then everybody has access to us. So also within that team, we work alongside our criminal justice service, which, as you can imagine, there's a lot of correlation between child exploitation and criminal justice. And then you've got early help workers and youth offending workers that are working within both of the teams. So that is split into 2 teams across the county, and all of those workers are extremely qualified and extremely skilled and passionate, not only at working around youth offending, but I have to say that the reason this team was set up was because they wanted people in those teams that wanted to work with teenagers. I cannot emphasize that enough. You know, those of you that are professionals that you may have, you know, worked within social care settings, you either love teenagers or you hate them. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Some people like and they're really passionate about working with them. They enjoy it. They know how to talk to them. And some people don't. There's no right or wrong. What we knew we needed, though, is to have a group of people that had so much skills and expertise at working with adolescents, because adolescence is that period of time in their life which is the most dangerous for so many of our children. This is where the risk happens. This is where we can lose them. This is where their frontal cortex has not developed and they're starting to respond to every reaction going on around them and they're fight or flight, but actually, you know, they haven't got the brain to be doing that. So that's just my little bit to show that we are set up in a way that is designed to work very well with adolescents. All of these people work together as well. This is not all these teams working in silo. The comms between all these teams is absolutely incredible. I'm going to try this one. This is really, really interesting, and it comes with a bit of a trigger warning, everybody. I found this really powerful the first time I watched it. The first time I watched it, I realised as an adult, I hadn't really heard about ACEs, and I realised, damn, I've got a few of those. So it was triggering for me. So I'm just going to give you that. If you don't wish to watch it, turn it off. But I think it is a very well-made video, and this sums up why this sort of work at this stage is so difficult. Oh, Bear with me, I think, oh no. See, I've hyped up now, haven't I? Let's go into the next slide, Claire. Oh, let me see if I can actually scan the whole lot.
Can you grab it? I can I can maybe grab it. Just give me a second. I'm going to see if I can do.
I think it just goes to the next slide when I double click.
You know, on your actual slides, can you put it in the chat maybe? Can you actually sort of you know, like,
I think it might be working now.
Okay.
Can you see it?
No, you might need to reshare.
Oh, hang on. Oh, techno.
We're getting some
central link click. Thank you. I love it when somebody on the hang on. I got that there. No, I know I can hear it.
If you stop presenting,
yeah,
and then be playing it on your internet. I don't even know if that's the the world wide. Play it on your World Wide Web, and then share it. Yeah.
Right. Oh. Right. Stop sharing. Should have practiced this, shouldn't I, Claire? Right, I think I've stopped sharing. No, haven't. Stop sharing there. And then I'm gonna, share there. Come on, Lucy. Aha.
I wonder if it'll play, if it's got sound and things, but we'll see. It should be okay.
See. Can you hear it, Claire?
No.
You're not. Hi, excuse me. If you press Control and click, I can get it to work.
Right, I heard somebody help rescue me then.
Yeah, it was about Control and click. Could everyone do that if they're just on mute? Can they watch it themselves?
If not, it'll come out anyway. It's a 3-minute video, yes. I think it is. So I think maybe we'll send it, Claire, rather than
yeah, we will
try and do that. It's a lovely video that it really does share some different perspective, I would say, in terms of why children get hauled into exploitation. Right, let me resume this. Thank you. Okay. Right, so one of the things we look at, and I said earlier, in terms of vulnerability factors, what makes a child or teenager vulnerable to exploitation? And actually, the answer could be absolutely anything out there. Some of the really common things that we see, though, are children that are perhaps young carers, children perhaps that have a lot of time where they're supervising themselves. We might see children that have got an EHCP or they've got neurodiversity. A lot of the time, the children that we are seeing, they may already have something that has already made them vulnerable to exploitation. So although we don't want to see through the process that we've got all these children coming in to be referred to us just because they're vulnerable, that doesn't, we sort of can't do that just because they're vulnerable. But once we know they're vulnerable and if we see signs of that exploitation, that's when we really try to get all the services wrapped around that person to try and divert what's happening as quickly as possible, because this does happen very quickly. Something we talk about in children's services is around our language and how we frame things. And this is exactly the same for parents and carers, but all professionals. How we frame things to children is going to have a lasting effect on how they feel, whether they think they've been listened to, whether they think they've been heard, whether they actually feel that perhaps, people think they're lying, etc. But also just the terminology we use has a connotation. And some of the old terminology, I'm just going to say out here, I'm going to say some of the words that were around when I started practice about 20 years ago. Claire's smiling because I think she's probably heard them as well back in the good old days. But people would actually say that a child was prostituting themselves. So people would say a child is prostituting themselves, like as if a child has a choice to do that. If somebody is a child and they're in that circumstance, then they are being groomed, sexually exploited and sexually abused. Some of the other words that they dress promiscuously, we'd see things like that, you know, where you'd almost have the blame put at the foot of the child. Maybe people are saying that they're willingly engaging in their criminality. What that is implying is that they know what decision they're making when they go out and they steal that car or they steal that packet of bubble gum from the shop. There's an assumption that they understand the consequences and they understand it's as clear as black and white. They might not understand it's as clear as black and white. It might actually be that the bigger risk for that person is the other person that's going to come after them if they don't do it, not the police. Getting caught shoplifting or getting caught doing this is probably really low down on their list of concerns. So when we say something like they're willfully engaging or they are choosing to make that decision, what we're suggesting is that they are going into this and entering into it with a very full and very clear knowledge of the world, which I don't know about you, but I'm yet to find a 17-year-old that's really got a clear knowledge of the world and how it operates. So is that element of it sounds patronizing, but they don't understand. So we have to use language that frames how they're being treated, and challenge this as well. You know, if somebody says, a professional says something, as a parent, challenge it. If that makes that child sound like they are to blame for that action, then you can challenge that. Okay. I think this one will work because the other one did. It's very, very quick. It's about a minute long, this one. And the reason I want to play this is because there are 3 key stages. They're called different things in different models, but I like the way it's called in this one. As professionals, when we're working with children, how we work with them will depend on what stage they're in. Exactly the same for you as parents. The behaviours that you will be seeing will depend on the different stages of exploitation that they're in. Now, these stages, they could go 0 to the end of stage 3 within a few weeks. It's unlikely because it's usually much longer in those early stages. But there is 3 clear stages and the behaviours of that victim will change. Let's give it a go. Okay, I really like that. It's short and it's snappy. And I'd have no idea why Peppa Pig came up following that, but there you go. Short and it's snappy, and you can clearly see the 3 stages. You can see what everybody calls the grooming stage. That's the word that stuck. That's the word that people know. That is the stage where they're going along and they are giving people things. It's when people say to me, oh, it's all right. He's my mate. He's given me a bit of cannabis for my own use. And we're automatically going, oh, you might not have asked for anything yet, but we know it's coming. Yeah, we can see it. There is a typical way of grooming. It's the same as sometimes people that are perpetrators of domestic abuse work. There is a social structure to it in terms of grinding away the people that surround that person that care for them to get them on their own, to make them feel that that person is the only one. There is an absolute psychology in it. They are trying to get into the heads of these children in order to get these children to do what it is that they want. So signs and indicators, what is it that you guys will see that's going to tell us that somebody might be being exploited? It will differ from what the parents see to what professionals see. It will differ in terms of what stage somebody sees that. But essentially what we're looking at is a number of things. We're looking at, is that child going missing from home? Are they going missing from home? Are they going out at night? Are they not coming home? I mean, if they're not coming home on time, I'd say that's relatively normal teenage behaviour. It's the patterns of that behaviour building up. It's getting later and later. Is it the child's climbing out the bedroom window at 2 a.m? Actually, when they go away, are they missing for 2 days at a time? What are we seeing in terms of those bigger pictures of when they're away from the home and when they are in the home? Are they getting phone calls that then mean they go outside and they're gone for 5 minutes and then they come back in again? Have they got one mobile phone, two mobile phones, maybe a couple of SIM cards that they're changing over? Are they more secretive with their mobile phones? I would say that I think most children / people are relatively secretive with their mobile phones. It's a personal, private item. And actually, that's normal. But it's when you'll find people perhaps swapping that SIM card over or hiding one of the phones or making a little bit of a scene about the phones. We've got a lot of children that will suddenly receive high value items. That might be that they receive branded items, might be, I know, nice new pair of Nike trainers, might be a Moncler coat, it might be a Canada Goose beanie, who knows? But a lot of the time we have some nice brand names thrown in that always make me go, uh-oh, I don't like that when I see that branding. And that's not because it's a bad brand. It's because sometimes it's associated with the music and the culture of these young people. So therefore it is sought after. Also, some of your really expensive coats that I've mentioned, like your Moncler, I will have to say that is, they stand out. They're wearing a very, very expensive coat. They're meant to stand out to a certain point with other people. So those are some of your signs and indicators. Obviously, we've also got things like changes in behaviour, but depending on what your baseline is for your child or the person that you're working with will depend on what that looks like. Some people will be naturally quiet and then will become louder. Some people might become, always be well groomed and then become quite unkempt. It's the professional curiosity or that curiosity of the parents where you go in, something isn't quite right and I know it isn't quite right for my child. I don't know what it is, but something's happening to them. And if you think back to that contextual safeguarding circle with all the rings on it, it's that thinking of, well, if you're in the home and you're pretty sure you know that nothing in the home is affecting, then what is upskilling that child? What's causing them anxiety or stress or to be a little bit guarded or on edge, whatever those behaviours are? It's having those questions, maybe asking a few of the parents, some of the friends' parents as well, knowing who your network is. Has school seen anything, heard anything? There is nothing wrong with starting to ask and actually, you're not accusing them of anything. It's just starting to see, has anybody else picked up on anything? When we're doing assessments, irrelevant of what type of assessment, we are always looking at what we call push and pull factors. So if you remember that circle, you almost have push factors as the middle bit. So these are the things that are happening in the home, in that immediate environment that the child, for whatever reason, is not happy with, and it makes them not want to be there and go out. That might be that they're caring for a younger sibling. It might be that there's domestic violence at home. It might be that there's parental substance use. I mean, I'm pulling out all the real high-end ones there, but it could be anything. It could be that their parents annoy them. It could be that they just don't want to be at home. But those are the push factors. And then what we've got is the pull factors. And these are the things that are more difficult to work with because we don't have as much control over these. These are the people. These are the places. These are the things that are luring, the things that are sort of motivating that child to get into sort of or outside of the home and sort of start gravitating a bit further into the community. So everything we look at when we're doing our assessment, we are looking at push and pull factors to see whether it's harm outside the home or harm within the home. Right, I've only put one slide up on this because I don't like to spend too long on county lines, if I'm completely honest. And the reason for that is because so many people think, oh, there's drugs, it must be county lines. And it isn't. A lot of the time, drugs are part of the world. If we're completely honest, drugs are out there. There is a market for them and people use them. Drug dealing, adult to adult, is a criminal act, but people will do it. What we're worried about is when we talk about this, it's the fact that somebody has exploited a child into that activity. And we know that by doing that activity and partaking in it, they are more likely for their life choices to go really, really wrong, end up in prison, end up with some sort of order, whatever that might look like, push the family and friends away. You know, it can spiral. We don't want them to get to that point. So the reason I've put this slide up is that although we see a lot of drug dealing, that does not mean it's a county line. In order for us to have a county line, what we need to know is we need to know that we've got an organised crime group that's controlling it. So I'm reliant on the police to give me the details so that I can understand the makeup. There needs to be an element of market research in that people understand what the deal line might be called, where they're working from, what vehicles they might be using. So it has to have been mapped out by an element of intelligence, and that will be across agencies as well, not just the police. We know that we need to have a deal line. That's often the name of the county line that it's given to the person that might be taking all of the orders. They're saying to everybody, yeah, it's the Yum Yum line. That's what it's going to be called. They might call themselves Yum Yum or Rico or soft and gentle deodorant. Who knows? It could be anything. But essentially, it's going to have a name, and there will be the movement of drugs and money and or weapons, okay? And they will be using either vulnerable children or vulnerable adults. And I find this really interesting because there are some areas around the county where I feel they are much more likely to use vulnerable adults than they are to use vulnerable children, which is very interesting to me, just in terms of why. But actually, when you break it down, is that the demographics, and there are more vulnerable adults in that specific area, so they'll use them. But there's lots of questions we can ask when we have all the data and we look at this. There's also what we know with county lines. It is a business model, and there is violence involved. We're seeing an awful lot of weapons involved. We're seeing children hiding weapons for people, taking photos of weapons on Snapchat. You know, they want the bally on and the great big machete, you know, to look really cool. But actually, you know, it's that connotation that they're given. It's really hard to get away from that. So that's what county lines are. I just thought that was a good place to have that one. Okay. I spoke earlier about children that go missing, and there's a statistic that says if a child goes missing 3 or more times in 90 days, they're classed as a frequent missing person. Okay, so in a 3-month period, if they have 3 missing episodes where they've been reported missing, they are going to be classed as a frequent MISPA in statutory layman's terms. What that means is if they are frequent MISPA, we have mechanisms in place in the council so that we can go out and we can support those children. We will sit down and we'll meet with the police. We will really try to make sure we understand what's happening for them. We will try and minimise it, because what we know is that 96% of children that are frequent MISPAs, so 96% of people that meet a 3 in 90, are going to be being exploited. It's our biggest indicator of them going missing. So the government knew this. There was lots of research done. So they made it a statutory, it's not even guidance, it is statutory, mandatory, that everybody now, all local authorities, have to offer a return home interview for children that go missing. So if a child goes missing and they're age under 10, that's going to go to our family assessment and support teams, because actually that's quite a young child. They've gone missing. They will need an assessment to look at the wider concerns around that. If a child's aged between 10 and until their 18th birthday and they're reported missing, what happens is parent carers phone the police log it on their system. They might come out and do a call, they might come out and do a visit, but they'll get some information from the parents and carers, and they will gauge what level of risk it is. They might say this is low risk, they might say it's medium, and they might say it's high. Very rarely do we get to high risk. The only time we get told somebody's a high risk MISPA is if that is a child that has left suicidal ideation or a form of distress that we know that they are possibly likely to come to some form of harm. So they're graded by the police, and basically what happens is we get notified that that child's missing, and we have different things that we will do to notify people at different levels in the council whilst that child is missing. Once we get to 72 hours, we notify some of our assistant directors to let them know what's happening. If it gets to 5 days of that child being missing, we are having multi-agency discussions, which are known as strategy discussions, to look at the planning work. We've also got the police missing coordinators working with us around trying to support to find that child and to gauge where the risk is. Children that are exploited, a lot of the time people want to put out a media alert. You've probably seen them on Lincolnshire Police. Yeah, child is missing, media alert. Has anybody seen this person? Please contact us if you have. That for some people is really good because it highlights who they are and it makes them seen, and we usually find them quicker. But if a child's being exploited, they may have been, I don't know, picked up from Sleaford and ended up travelling up to, I don't know, Leeds, and they're sat in a trap house somewhere in the middle of Leeds, and their photo starts going out. Yeah, it's making them too hot to handle. They could be at risk then of that. So we have to really balance up what risk they're in while they're missing compared to what the likelihood is of us finding them through using a media appeal. But quite often those media appeals are around this type of work. So it's to say that, you know, children that are missing from home, they do have a really robust service. Once they've been found and the police go out and they do their visit, a safe and well check, what happens is comes through to children's services, and children's services will have a look to see if that child is open to anybody. If they're open to a social worker or an early help worker, that information is passed to them and they will carry out that return home interview. If it isn't open to them, what they do is we go to our early help front door and then we find out if what school that child is at, because 9 times out of 10 that child will much more likely talk to openly and honestly somebody they know at school than they will to a complete stranger. So it's not about shirking that responsibility, it's understanding, and the data tells us that when they have an established relationship, people are more likely to speak openly. So that's why missing has got a really big profile, I think, within child exploitation, that an awful lot of our children do go missing for days on end, and they have been exploited, trafficked to other places. So what we say to everybody is, all of our professionals that are out there, there isn't a pathway for parents yet, but there's what we'd say to parents is phone up the customer service centre if you had a concern. They'd take the details and they'd come through to us, so it would still get to us, but there isn't a direct pathway for parents. We have had parents fill in the CE screening tool, but how they accessed it or found it, I don't know. But essentially what we're asking people, so any professionals that are out there, so they might be working in sexual health, they might be working in a school, they might be working in a youth club, they might be working in a doctor's surgery, children's services, everybody has the same tool. If they have one of those concerns, one of those indicators that thinks, oh God, something's not right with my kid, he's gone missing a bit, you know, there's some substance use happening, he's got a couple of mobile phones, he's going out at all hours, then everybody uses this tool. We're going to talk about who we think the victim is, so who we think's being affected, who the person of concern is. I know sometimes I talk about them as a perpetrator, but it is a person of concern. It's somebody that's concerning me around children for whatever reason, because I think they're manipulating that child into something. Or sometimes we have a location of concern. That might be an address down the road. You know, we get loads of calls, we get loads of CE screening tools that come in and say, we know that there is a property 5 streets down the road from the school and all the kids are going there after school and they're smoking cannabis and they're coming out stinking of it. Yeah, that's a location of concern, because we might not know who lives there at that point, but whatever the pull factor is, it might not be an adult, it might not be a person of concern, it might be another young person that's got a bit of a free house. Yeah, so it's around understanding all 3 of those elements before people send it in. So we ask people to send it in. They send in the CE screening tool. It comes through to business support. And what our business support team do is they have a look at that child and they say, okay, so I'm looking at child Billy and we've got person of concern called Alfie. And they will then try and get as much information around those 2 people as possible. They'll create a form for each of them so that everybody's got their own recording document. They'll go onto the child's record and say, that child's at, I don't know, whatever school. So they'll write off to that school or email them and say, do you have any further information? This concern's come in. Essentially, what we're doing here is very different to a lot of other local authorities, in that rather than us take one person's perspective from that CE screening tool, that might be one person with one set of views of what's happening. What we've done is we've taken a period of 10 working days to actually send that out to as many people, because the more information we've got at the next stage, the better the outcome will be and the better knowledge we'll have at trying to disrupt it. So essentially, people fill in the CE screening tool, we send it out to as many people as possible and get as much information, and then it comes up to this top blue box here. And this is your level 1 MACE discussion. This is where I meet every Friday on a screen with a colleague from the police and a colleague from our health teams. We sit, obviously I'm going to sit, I'm not standing and talking, but I'm going to sit there, we're going to literally look through all of the concerns that have been put on that document. I know that child's vulnerabilities. I know what the push and pull factors are. I know what their relationships look like in the home. I know who the protective factors are. I know what the CE indicators are. I know what the worries are. And from all of that, I can the panel will be able to say, we think that child is experiencing criminal exploitation, or we think they're experiencing sexual exploitation, or we think they're experiencing both, or actually sometimes we think they're experiencing neither. And there are lots of ones that come in where there isn't any exploitation and it's in an appropriate age-related relationship, that has been misconstrued. That comes down to all the work we're trying to do with professionals to get them to understand what CE is. So we've gone to level 1. It might be that at level 1, we think, there's nothing to disrupt here, but we'll give them some resources and give them some support around what they can be doing to support that child through this journey. It might be that we can do a briefing to our neighbourhood policing teams or put a few things out there that just makes this person sort of on people's radar so we can build that intel picture up a bit. If it is that we can see that there is exploitation, though, when we're at level 1, and what we want to do is we really think we need to try and nip this in the bud, we are going to take it to a level 2 meeting. That's where we invite all those other professionals in. We're going to get police, we're going to get everybody sat around a table. You can have up to 20 professionals sometimes supporting. And we may have a discussion on the person of concern, or it may be on the victim. But essentially, that discussion will focus on one of them, usually the person of concern, because that's the person we disrupt, remember? If you think back, the child has usually got the support around them already. So at that meeting, the chair will introduce, they'll give a quick summary and say, blah, 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 we're worried about little Billy because little Billy's been arrested for possession with intent to supply. He's been found with this amount of stuff. The phone line was taken and it looks like he's dealing on behalf of somebody else. Criminal exploitation. So that is where we then get everybody around that table. What can we do? What don't we know? And we need to know. So who can find that out around the table? Once we've got those gaps, what are we going to do to stop Alfie from getting Billy to sell his drugs for him? How can we do that? And that might be that we have somebody from the district council saying, well, I've got CCTV across their house. Why don't we keep a bit of monitoring, not surveillance, but a little bit of monitoring just to see what patterns of behaviour we can see. School might say, do you know what? I'm due to go out and do a home visit to the family. Why don't I go out and actually see Alfie's family or whoever, and then I can get in that way and see what's happening. The innovation at these meetings blows me away every week, when sometimes people were just like, do you know what, let's try this, we can try it. We have got so many people that are desperate to turn children away from this path, because this path of criminality is really hard to get out of. Sometimes once we're at that and we've set the actions, we know that people are disrupting, we know what the police are going to do, we know what the council's going to do, etc. We've made sure they've got the support around them. For some of those cases, we are worried, or we need to see the outcome of those actions before we close it to May. So what we will do on those rare examples, we will have another review, and that can keep going round in that process, those bottom 2 processes, until that's done. So that is the robust process that everybody in Lincolnshire has got in place. If there is a child out there that is experiencing exploitation and they have been missed by all the professionals that interface with that child, the parent can pick up the phone and they can phone through to customer services, and this will come through to us and we will be able to unpick that with them. But I would say that 9 times out of 10 there is usually a professional supporting that family, where the family have been able to say to the family have been able to say to that professional, whatever capacity, that we need some help, we're worried about this. There's very few people that come through to us where they're not known to services or they're not open at this stage. Woo! We've got expectations of MACE. Everybody that comes to MACE, we say that we want to make sure that if we've asked you for something, please bring it. Sometimes you might say, we haven't got the right date of birth, can you bring that next time? We want everybody to read through the paperwork. We want them to prepare any updates and bullet point and work out what they're going to share in terms of the actions. We want them to explore what actions they may have been set at level 1, whether they've done them. They join teams. There is an introduction, an overview, and then we're going to review actions and look at disruption. Although there's all those bullet points, the focus of that meeting is disruption. It's not around that little Billy doesn't like going into art class anymore. In all honesty, that's a little snippet of the bigger picture that's going to cause the harm. Okay, you all live at different geographical areas. Just to show you what Lincolnshire looks like with exploitation, top left on there is what I'm looking at there is all of those CE screening tools that we get that come through to a to come through to MACE essentially. Back in 2019, we had under 170. 2023, we got up to 100, under, well, 700, and we have dropped a little bit, but only by about 40 cases in 2024, and I don't know why. We'll just be thankful that it did drop a little bit. But essentially, they're all the ones that come through level 1. We have done better, as you can see over the time, that red and that purple line is increasing. That means that more people out there are identifying locations of concern. That means that people starting to understand contextual safeguarding more. They understand that it's not the home that isn't a risk to this child. It is the harm outside the home, which is a risk to sort of the trajectory of their life. So we're getting better at that. Then if you come across to the districts, that breaks it down. How many did we receive in level 1 for all of those? So again, you've got all the different areas. Lincoln shoots up in 2023. Lincoln gets really, really busy. And I would say Lincoln is still really busy. It's a city. You've got a university. You've obviously got a market for drugs. And you've got an awful lot of entertainments, businesses and all sorts around there that are, you know, vying for money. I think it's natural. The other thing that I think is a real contributor to that is we have an awful lot of supported accommodation within Lincoln itself. So that will increase our number of 16 and 17-year-olds living there. Then we're looking at the amount of people that go through to level 2. We've got a lot better at not taking people through to level 2 necessarily. Yeah, a lot of those people, it was very minimal exploitation that we were seeing. So there was no need for disruption. We just felt that information, advice and guidance back to the worker was suffice. And again, if you look at the actual level 2 MACE discussions, Lincoln factors really predominantly throughout all of that. But you're all feeling really great if you're living in Lincoln. Okay, some top tips for parents, I think, and this is around what you can do. And I think, as I said at the beginning, you are the best safeguarders. You are the eyes and the ears. You will see all sorts. You know, if they are going to go out, just take note of what they're wearing. Take a little, you know, I don't think they're going to let you stand there and take a photo of them, but write it down so you know if they don't come back what it is they've gone out in. Yeah, if the child does go missing, you know, before you phone the police, that priority really is to understand who are their friends, who is their network, where else would they go? Can I have a little drive around? Is it safe to do so? You know, do I know anybody that I can call to come and help me with this? The police really struggle when they are called the moment somebody has realised somebody's missing in these sorts of circumstances, because actually a lot of the time, this is where the parent carer can be doing quite a bit before we get to that point. We want you to be observe and be curious about the people and the places that they talk about, the places they go, the places they might talk about other people. Are they sending Snapchats? Have you seen where that location is? Have you got them on any Find My Friends or anything like that? It all helps us to understand the patterns of behaviour and where they're going. Life litter is something that tells us about your lifestyle. So if I was to open up my handbag and tip it out, it would be an absolute mess, everybody. But there will be receipts in there. There will be bits of paper that might, you know, might say I've had an appointment here or I've been there. I might have an old train ticket that I've left in there. Those are all bits of life litter, and children are probably worse at leaving bits of life litter around than we are. And actually, sometimes understanding those little bits of litter, you know, the packaging that comes through where they've had something delivered, but actually, you know, you don't know who that's come from or who's purchased it. Have a little look at the packaging. All of that becomes life litter. Keep a diary or a track of an activity if you need to. You know, sometimes people say, well, I've had loads of people coming on the Ring doorbell. Keep the footage. Yeah, if somebody's coming, you know, every 10 minutes they're ringing the Ring doorbell. Somebody's coming, or actually they're going out and you know that they've gone down the road. Just keep a log. We're not asking you to shop that son or daughter to say, right, police, and I think they're doing this on this time necessarily. What we're asking you to do is help us to understand what their pattern of activity is so that we can understand who is doing this and who is pulling their strings. And when we know who that is, then we've got more of a chance of stopping them and we can get their hooks out of that child. Monitor mobile phone use. This comes with a caution in that mobile phone use is so sophisticated. People will often say on training sessions, oh, you know, yeah, parents check the phone. Well, I'm sure they do. But if you're not sure what you're looking for, you're not going to be checking the right things. And that's the problem. So most people will go onto a mobile phone and they might check, WhatsApp, they might check Messenger. I've lost the ability to talk now, but some of you are very generic. But actually, there are so many platforms out there that people are communicating on, hundreds upon hundreds of them. Most of them are free. They don't have to pay anything, but they're encrypted, a bit like WhatsApp, but they're encrypted. And the other thing is they won't look like a talking platform. It might look on the front of the mobile phone screen like it's a little square of a I know, a calculator, or it looks like it's a conversion chart, or it might be a school timetables app. You just don't know. They are hidden. The reason they're hidden is because kids know that you're going to check their phone, and you're probably going to check the basic apps. So unless somebody's going to put on something that, like, I know, Life 360 or some of the apps that actually mirror what they're looking at, they'll tell you every app that they're accessing, they'll tell you what they're looking at. If people are going to go to that extent, then yes, those might work, but that is very much going to depend on the personal preferences of that family as well. Speak to professionals if you're worried, whether that's going into school, to professionals that are already established, whether it's just bouncing ideas off them and saying, do you know what, I'm really worried about this kid, I'm not sure, I've got a couple niggles. Actually, somebody else might have another piece of that jigsaw puzzle. And those little bits of those communication and talking to people is what really does help us. If you're working in a school, or you're working, with health or whatever, how can you phone the family, etc., to find out what's happening? And one top tip that I always say, if you've got a child that's going frequently missing, and we know they have been exploited into criminal activity or sexual activity at that time, I always say have a script ready when you're going to report them missing. It really helps, okay? Because the force control room will be taking the calls, and they will be taking the calls, and they get so many. Sometimes they're so tied up in asking you the bog standard questions that we forget to shoehorn in the really vital bits of information, such as if you had it written there that Billy was subject to multi-agency child exploitation meetings because he's high risk for criminal exploitation, and we know that these are the people that he was away with last time for 3 days. That's going to help the police straight away. They know how to prioritize that. Yeah, they know in terms of that risk. We need to give them the information, and sometimes having a script will help you. Those of you with workers will have that access as well. All right, whip through the last few now. Then there is something in place. You won't need to know about this, but it's just really so that you know it is there. It's something called a national referral mechanism. And essentially, because we don't want children to go to prison for crimes that they've been made to do, what it is the Home Office introduced a form that the Children's Services or the police can fill in, and it sets out why we think a child is being exploited. So I might say, I think Billy's being exploited because we found the deal line, we found this, we found that, he's been arrested for possession with intent to supply, we've got this, we know the people doing it, blah, blah, blah. And the Home Office will come back and say, yeah, he's being exploited. It's likely he's being exploited, or it's conclusive. When we get it to that conclusive point, and that's a journey, we keep feeding the beast with information to get that analysis done. When we get to that conclusive point, if little Billy was to get arrested and little Billy was to go and stand in front of a judge for possession with intent to supply, let's just say lots of cocaine, actually his solicitor would have the right to bring out Section 45 defence. He can come out at any time anyway. The police should be bringing it out if a child is arrested anyway for that, because they should be saying, you're not the mastermind behind this, son. I think you are being exploited by somebody. That doesn't always happen, but if we've got the NRM completed, that will give an element of protection for the child. And when we've got that, what we've also got is another service that we often hire in. So this is our independent child trafficking guardianships, our ICTIGs. I've just realised I've still got Helen on that slide. It isn't Helen anymore at all. It's Ellie Gahan now for the East Midlands. But essentially, this is the team that we will refer into and get their specialist support when there's high-end trafficking. And then these will come out to you as well. This is a bit of a resource wall. There are some services on there that are really useful. If you pop in each of these, you'll Google them and bring up anyway the links, and I'll send you some other links. You've got Top Boy, very good to watch with your kids, really topical. You can bring up some brilliant conversations. Do bear in mind it's been set in a city. We're not, obviously we've got Lincoln, but we're not quite the same as in a city London. And you've obviously got the Three Girls on there as well, which is on iPlayer. Again, around sexual exploitation, they're really topical, and there are some lovely resources out there to help you work with people, if you're working in a professional capacity. That's it. I have talked for far too long. As always, And if anybody has any questions at all, I am more than happy. You can either ask me now in a group, or I'm quite happy to just stay on for 5 minutes at the end as well if people don't want to ask in an open forum. I do appreciate sometimes it just starts up that curiosity of scenarios and things. So more than happy. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask openly? No, okie dokie.
Take that as a good sign, Lucy, because
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. I think I just want to thank you. I think the way that you've put that together just explains really well, you know, what we're trying to achieve as well, and what we're thinking, and yeah, giving it from a Lincolnshire point of view.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you. We'll send these slides. I'll pop lots of other things in as well, guys. You know, just some things that are really useful. But my email, I think, was on the front slide, lucy.brown@Lincolnshire. I have no issue with people contacting me if they have any further questions or even any scenarios that they want to run past. Email me. I will pick up the phone and give you a ring back.